In the endless silence between stars, there are stories the galaxies never record, small, fragile moments that shift the balance of everything without making a sound. The great wars and treaties are written in archives and databanks, their outcomes measured in fleets and planets. But every so often, something happens that defies the metrics of history. Something so quiet that only the hearts of those who witness it ever truly understand its power. Station Kepler 9 was one of 1,000 sentinels orbiting the borders of known civilization, a gleaming fortress of alloy and code, home to representatives from 17 sentient species. It was built to embody peace, a single station where predator and prey shared meals, where ammonia breathers and oxygen breathers worked side by side. Its systems were precise, its laws absolute, its order perfect. At least, that was the idea. Commander Irex Tal had served there for 20 cycles. A soldier by instinct, she trusted data, regulation, and the comfort of predictability. But there were still things no scanner could measure. Things like the strange warmth that spread through the corridors whenever humans passed by. The humans were few in number, but their presence always drew attention. They were survivors from a world classified by the Coalition as a death planet, a place where nearly everything tried to kill them. And yet, they smiled more than most species she knew. They laughed loudly. They touched things, and each other, constantly. To Tal's people, that closeness bordered on madness. To humans, it was just living. She had seen them fight beside the Coalition's finest soldiers with ferocity that bordered on insanity. She had also seen one of them spend half an hour comforting a wounded technician from a species that did not even speak the same language. They were unpredictable, beautifully, terrifyingly unpredictable. But even for a species as strange as humanity, what was about to happen aboard Kepler 9 would surpass anything the commander could have imagined. It began not with an explosion or a battle, but with a quiet alarm. 17 young, the future of 7 worlds, would vanish from their beds. And before the night ended, a single human heartbeat would remind an entire station what it truly meant to be alive. Commander Irex Tal's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession as crimson letters burned across her neural interface. The alert pulsed like a wound, staining the sterile walls of Station Kepler 9's security office with its bleeding light. She had faced pirate fleets, viral infestations, even a hull breach over the ammonia storms of Leth Prime, but never this. Never the disappearance of children. The hum of the station's life support faded beneath the pounding of her twin hearts. She reread the message twice, unwilling to believe what she saw. 17 cubs, offspring of 7 species, all gone from the nursery wing. The nursery was more than a room. It was a promise. Those young lives were living proof that peace among the stars was possible. If they were lost, the fragile trust between worlds could shatter. Tal's chitinous legs struck the deck plates in rapid rhythm as she sprang from her console. All units, converge on Nursery Wing Alpha. Priority 1. All other operations suspended. The command echoed down the corridors. Officers scrambled after her, their mandibles clicking in nervous staccato. When they reached the nursery section, pandemonium reigned. Feathered, scaled, furred, and crystalline caretakers shouted in overlapping languages. The scent of fear hung thick. Tal activated her translator and amplified her voice. Silence. The command cracked through the uproar like thunder, leaving a stunned quiet behind. An Aquaquelin attendant slithered forward, its tentacles trembling. Commander, the evening check was routine. Then the children were simply gone. All 17. No breaches. No alarms. No footage. Tal's antennae drew back. Impossible. She summoned the surveillance feeds directly to her neural display and watched in disbelief as, one after another, each cub rose from its bed and walked calmly toward the exit. No coercion, no panic. Just deliberate movement. They walked out, she murmured, as if summoned. Pheromonal interference? Psychic manipulation? A pathogen? She opened a bioscan overlay and located each cub's signal. Her breath caught. All 17 life signs pulsed in one place. Human quarters B-14. Occupant Eli Grant. For the briefest moment she stood still, considering everything she knew about humans. They were a paradox. Soft, slow, fragile, and somehow among the most feared species in the Coalition. Their world was a death trap of predators and poison. They had survived by evolving a strange duality, compassion fused with ferocity. They could destroy worlds and cradle infants with the same hands. Now, one of them was at the heart of this mystery. She drew her sidearm, but kept it holstered. Non-lethal protocols only, she ordered. The words were habit. The truth was, she did not expect violence. What she expected was something she could not yet define. The corridor toward the human quarters seemed longer than usual, lit by soft amber strips instead of the bright coalition white. The air temperature rose several degrees. Tal's carapace prickled from the heat. Humans, she muttered under her breath. Their environmental settings always leaned toward discomfort for others, but they claimed it reminded them of home. She could not imagine such a world. Her team marched in silence, the echo of their steps the only sound. Possible motives, Tal said, half to herself. Hostage situation? Unlikely. Smuggling? No records. Ritual? Unconfirmed. None of it fit. Eli Grant's file described a maintenance specialist with a clean service record, known for volunteering on difficult shifts and helping technicians from other species adapt to human equipment. They reached his door. Tal pressed the chime. Once. Twice. Nothing. Override. Tal's 7 crimson. The lock disengaged with a sigh of air. Inside, the temperature climbed again. The light dimmed to a gentle gold. Tal's eyes adjusted and froze. Eli Grant sat cross-legged in the middle of the room, surrounded by a sprawling mountain of blankets and pillows that cascaded across the floor like dunes. Nestled inside that fortress of fabric were 17 cubs from 7 different species, all asleep. A Velian shimmered faintly in the light, crystalline for scattering rainbow glints. 2 Quellan twins had their small tentacles coiled around his arms. A Thesian kit barely the size of his hand nestled under his chin. Every one of them breathed slowly, peacefully, utterly safe. Tal's weapon hand dropped. The air vibrated with something fragile, almost sacred. She feared to break it. The human himself slept sitting upright, his head tipped back, exhaustion carved into his face. Beside him, a small earth device murmured faint sounds of rain. Tal could not move. She had been a soldier all her life, and yet she felt utterly defenseless before this sight. One of her officers whispered, "Commander?" She silenced him with a gesture. The Velian cub stirred, blinked its luminous eyes at the armed intruders, yawned, and buried its face back into the human's chest. Eli Grant stirred awake, blinking at the squad in his doorway. He lifted a finger to his lips, the universal gesture for silence, and then, moving with slow precision, began to extract himself from the tangle of sleeping children. He tucked blankets around them as he shifted, ensuring none were disturbed. When he was free, he gestured politely for Tal to follow him into the hallway. The door slid closed behind them, muffling the soft breathing within. "I'm guessing you got the alert," he said quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. His voice was rough, sleep-deprived, almost apologetic. "Explain," Tal replied. He sighed. "They came to me." "Came to you?" "Yeah. First the Quellan twins. Then the Thesian kit. Then more. They just showed up at my door, crying. Couldn't settle. The nursery's clean and safe, sure, but it's not comforting. Too much metal. Too much light. They needed something else." Tal frowned. "And what was that?" He met her gaze. "Someone to be there. Not because it's duty. Just because." The simplicity of it disarmed her more than any weapon could have. He continued. "On Earth, when someone's scared, we hold them. Doesn't matter if it's a child or a soldier. Sometimes that's all it takes. Presence. We call it holding space." Tal considered the phrase. Her people laid eggs in communal incubators and rarely touched their young after hatching. Contact was unnecessary. Inefficient. Yet what she had just seen could not be dismissed as inefficiency. It was a form of stability no algorithm could replicate. "You spent 2 hours holding children of 7 species," she said slowly. "For no reward." He shrugged, exhaustion etched into his posture. "They're kids, Commander. Scared kids. What else was I supposed to do?" The words lingered. What else was I supposed to do? It was not defiance, merely truth. Tal felt something unfamiliar in her chest, a warmth that was not physiological. "I should file a report," she said at last. "This was a breach of security." "I know," Grant admitted. "I thought about calling someone, but once they finally fell asleep, I couldn't wake them. Not after all that crying." Her mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "You are dangerous, human." He looked startled. Dangerous. Yes, she said softly. You wield something we cannot defend against. What's that? Compassion. For the first time, he laughed. It was a quiet sound, half amusement, half disbelief. The following cycle, Tal filed her report. Officially, the event was classified as a spontaneous juvenile relocation triggered by emotional instability. Unofficially, she marked it as a revelation. She returned to Grant's quarters that evening to find the door open. Inside, he was again surrounded by cubs, awake this time, telling stories. He gestured her inside. They won't sleep unless I finish the one about the dragon, he said. Apparently, dragons are universal. She watched in silence as he spoke softly, his voice weaving images in the children's minds. The crystalline Velian reflected shifting colors with each breath. A feathered Yorith kit blinked up at him, eyes wide with wonder. The human's words were gentle, patient, endlessly kind. When the last cub yawned and settled into his lap, Tal spoke quietly. Authorization Tal 7 Crimson, she said. Human Quarters B-14 are hereby reclassified as Auxiliary Nursery Unit for emotional stabilization. Effective immediately. Grant blinked, startled. You're serious? Entirely. He looked down at the pile of children and smiled faintly. Guess I've been promoted to babysitter. Specialist Grant, she corrected. And yes, night duty, indefinitely. He nodded once, with the weary dignity of someone accepting an impossible task because it needs to be done. I can do that. That night, as she walked the corridor back to the command deck, the station felt different. Softer somehow. The tension that had clung to the air since the alarm began seemed to have lifted. Tal thought about humanity's strange dual nature, the violence of their history, the tenderness that survived it. A death-world species capable of both destruction and devotion. Perhaps the Coalition had underestimated the latter. Weeks passed. Reports flowed in from across the station. Juveniles who had refused sleep now rested peacefully. Caretaker morale improved. Even the station's ambient stress readings fell. Command requested a formal analysis. Tal submitted it without embellishment. Cross-species juveniles exhibit improved emotional regulation when exposed to human-caregiver interaction. Recommend replication of model. The metrics were clean, concise, and utterly inadequate. Late one night, unable to rest, Tal walked again to B-14. Through the observation window, she saw the same sight that had begun this quiet miracle. Eli Grant lay on the floor of his quarters, surrounded by his fortress of pillows and blankets. The cubs were draped around him, small shapes breathing in harmony. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into infinite cold. Inside, a single human heartbeat kept time for 17 tiny lives. Tal stood there for a long time, listening through the glass as his voice drifted up in soft human words she could not translate. It was a song, low and rhythmic, about stars and safety and home. The cubs stirred, one chirped, another purred, then all settled again. She whispered, "Sleep well, specialist." Her translator did not translate. It didn't need to. Some meanings travel farther without words. In the days that followed, news of the incident spread quietly through the Coalition. On distant outposts, humans were invited to assist in nurseries and care centers. Reports of improved emotional stability followed. Scientists called it a neuroaffective synchronization phenomenon. Soldiers called it a miracle. The children simply called it bedtime. And somewhere on Kepler 9, within a fortress of fabric and warmth, a man from a deadly world held the children of the stars while they dreamed. The galaxy outside remained vast, indifferent, and cold, but within that small circle of light humanity's greatest secret glowed. That strength was never the absence of tenderness. It was the courage to offer it first. Even in the vacuum of space, humans brought warmth. And that warmth, quiet and relentless, might one day change the fate of every world that learned to feel it. The official report was clinical, devoid of emotion, as all reports were. It documented the event as an unplanned cross-species juvenile relocation, resolved without injury. It noted that the young had been discovered safe in Human Quarters B-14, in the company of specialist Eli Grant. It described the physiological benefits observed afterward: stabilized sleep cycles, reduced stress indicators, increased trust responses across species. There were percentages and charts, all neat and tidy. But no report could capture what truly happened that night. The story spread slowly at first, whispered through the ranks, told by caretakers and technicians, then passed through fleets and colonies until it became a legend. On stations far from Kepler 9, engineers told it over shared meals. Soldiers repeated it before long journeys into deep space. Parents, no matter what species, retold it to their own children before sleep. They called it the Night of Warmth. And humanity, so often defined by its contradictions, brutal and kind, reckless and gentle, became something new in the eyes of the galaxy. Not conquerors, not saviors, but caretakers of comfort, keepers of warmth in the dark. Months later, Commander Tal still made her rounds past the auxiliary nursery unit. The cubs had grown. Some were preparing to return to their homeworlds. Eli Grant remained at his post, still surrounded by pillows, still watching over whoever wandered in. Tal often paused at the viewport just to listen. Inside, Grant's voice carried softly through the air, singing an old Earth lullaby in a language the station's translators refused to touch. The cubs hummed and chirped in their own tones, some rhythmic, some discordant, yet somehow all in harmony. The sound was alive in a way no artificial system could ever recreate. Tal found herself thinking of that night, of the way the universe had felt just a little less cold afterward. She had seen power measured in armies, in ships, in energy yields that could scorch worlds. None of it compared to the quiet, stubborn strength of one human choosing to hold a frightened child until dawn. From her logbook that evening, a final note. The Coalition often seeks strength in numbers, order, and law. But perhaps survival will not depend on force or fear. Perhaps it will depend on something simpler. A touch, a song, a heartbeat. The warmth humans carry from their impossible world into the infinite night. Wherever they go, the cold retreats just a little. I find myself hoping they never stop wandering. As she closed the entry, she glanced once more through the window. Inside, the human was dozing amid his fortress of blankets, surrounded by the cubs of the stars. Beyond the glass stretched the vast dark sea of space, silent, endless, and eternal. But in that tiny room, one fragile species had lit a fire that would never go out. Even in the emptiness between worlds, humans brought warmth. And sometimes, that was enough to save the galaxy.